is Braves 2017 exclamation point. So it's actually 4 numbers after Braves and a character. And Joy, this is also in the shared folder that we have with you guys. So,
Okay, yeah.
So the program leadership has access to that, and the faculty can have access to that too if you want.
Okay.
And that'll also be the same place where I'll put all the presentation documents today and all the other documents that we've shared in the folders. I'll put digital copies of those in that folder as well.
In the-
when I get back.
So it's 2017, then after that it's 1?
It's an exclamation point.
Oh, okay. That's why it didn't work.
Believe me, that password's a lot easier than what the IT people wanted it to be. Did everybody get that?
I was looking around here to see if we had a rep from IT in here today.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Terry, who do you represent? Distance Ed, right? Alvin, are you with IT?
Hold on, wait, what are you pointing at me for? And he said distance ed. I'm like, hold on, I'm not here.
Everything's okay till I get pointed out.
Alvin, are you with IT?
Yes, I'm the LMS person.
Terry is the go-to person to solve all your technological problems.
You should be, yeah, but I'm the LMS guy.
You're the LMS guy?
Yeah.
So-
Your LMS?
Yes, so that's where these questions are coming from. I've done this before, so I just want to make sure these guys are comfortable with this new transition.
Exactly.
Because this had to be a partnership.
Yep.
And that's why these questions are coming up with
And-
orientation and usage.
And
Best
that's why this environment like this that we're doing, as messy as it is when you go and do the hands-on element and the live element, allow it to be here where Matt is here and I'm here to problem shoot you. The idea is to alleviate a little bit the concern that when you're on your own in your home and your computer, suddenly things don't work and you don't have anybody to go and ask a question to. So taking risk here, it's invited.
Is this called the course map?
Yes, that is.
Okay. So if we go into faculty commons, we're not.
And the password
I typed in
is
course map at Braves.
Capital B.
It could be because we're restructuring that site. Some of the things that are on there may not be available in the search function at the moment.
But in the sharing folder, we can add materials to help you read more about the course map and we'll add some material there for you to read and
Perfect. Thank you.
okay.
So we wanted to talk about coaching for a little bit, and honestly, it's one of the biggest questions that I get when we talk about this partnership. I've worked with several universities that use the coaching model, and I've been working with it as long as I've been at AP. And the thing is, if you worked with TAs or GAs in your course, it's kind of the same principle, except that these folks are virtual. So they're not going to be next to you in your classroom or anything like that, but they're going to be in your class online. They're going to be in your LMS. And the thing that I always start by telling faculty is that the coaches are who you want them to be. And we'll kind of walk through that a little bit. But when they're in your course, they're your employee. They may be provided to you by a third-party provider called Instructional Connections. But when they're in your course, you're supervising them, they're your employee. They should be doing what you want them to do. So, okay, I've got the.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
No problem. So, why use them? So, you're the faculty record in your course right now, and when you're talking about adding, students to your course right now, it can be a little random. I mean, on campus, I'm sure that once you get to a certain number of students, the section closes and you open a new section, and maybe that opens up a new instructor, that sort of thing. So, from a scalability standpoint, you probably can't teach 4 to 5 sections of a course, especially if there are, say, 25 students in that section. That would just simply be too much for you from an instructional standpoint. So, one of the things that the coaching model can do is kind of help you scale yourself a little bit. You're still going to be the instructor of record in your course. There may be more students in your course than you're used to, but you're going to have help in the vein of coaches. So think of it like this. This is one of the models we typically see. So you have the faculty of record for the course. And for every 25 students that you have in your course, you have an academic coach to help you with various things that you want them to do in your course. So you can see you're at the top, you have different coaches handling different students in different sections. And how that works is entirely up to the university. In some cases, the faculty of record has a coach for every 25 students. In other cases, there's a section that the faculty member is responsible for. And then for any successive sections, they're still the faculty of record and they're still interacting with students in that course, but they have a coach in that particular section to help them with the students in that particular section. So in terms of who these people are, for an MBA group like yours, you set the criteria. But generally speaking, the vast majority of the coaches that they have access to for MBA programs are going to be MBA prepared or higher. That said, if it's a quantitative course, if it's a marketing course, if it's a management course, you can set specific guidelines to instructional connections on what you're looking for. If you want somebody with 5 years of experience in the marketing field, who's been in the field and has that experience, then you can ask for that. And it's their job to go out and find people that can fulfill that requirement for you. What they'll do is they'll hand you a stack of CVs, resumes. You can review them, go through them and say, I like these 5 people, I want to talk to these 5 people. So you can do phone interviews with them. You can vet them with instructional connections help, and you choose which coaches you think will be best for your course. I would always choose a couple extra. And the reason I say that is you always want to have a plan B in case something comes up. Maybe you get more students in your section than you're expecting. Or unfortunately, every once in a while, the relationship between a coach and an instructor doesn't work for whatever reason. You're going to want to have somebody as a backup in case that transpires. They would have training in Canvas through instructional connections, so they would have a basic understanding of how the LMS works. We'll talk a little bit about preparing them to be in your course in a little bit, but they're there basically to help you, and we'll talk a little bit about the roles that they can have in your course. But just from an overview standpoint, what are you the most concerned about when it comes to coaches being in your course, or what other questions do you have as a way of kind of setting the conversation?
Probably just familiarity, getting used to them getting used to us and our styles, and I'm sure it's something we've never done before, so, I say that. Some of you guys may have worked with TAs before, but.
How many of you have worked with TAs before in some way, either at an undergraduate or graduate level? Okay, so it's kind of the same principle.
Let me make a comment here.
Yeah.
Because I think, our model that we're going for is probably different even if you've worked with TAs before, because of the potential size of the classes and the number of coaches that we would have. I mean, we build a model that goes up to 100 students in a section, and you would have 3 coaches for 100 students. So I don't know if I know I don't, but I don't know if anybody has any experience with anything quite like that. When we talked to LSU, Shreveport, they had classes, they were trying to get their class size down to 200 students per class. So, and I forget how many coaches they had. So it's this multiple coach thing. When I looked at it, it sounds like the instructor's job, as much as anything, is going to be managing these coaches if you have those kind of numbers.
It's certainly an
I mean,
aspect.
designing the course and everything, yeah, but once that's done, it's more of a function of managing those coaches.
Yeah, that's certainly a part of it. That's certainly part of it. Yes?
Do you have the clear definition on the responsibility for the coach, for example, like grading homework and response to the discussion board, or like have a virtual office hour? Do we have, or it depends on faculty's preference?
It does depend on faculty preference, and if you look in the folder on the back of the left-hand side, you're going to see a document that says course guidelines for academic coaches. So this is a planning document we put together a few months ago based on that very question. What do you want your coach to do in your course? And as we look at the allocation of roles for coaches, this is kind of a typical allocation of what they do here on the screen. But this document is actually very helpful because you can, it's almost like creating a lesson plan for your coaches in terms of what you want them to be responsible for on a week-to-week basis, the different things you want them doing. It gives you a timeline on the second page. In other words, prior to course start, 2 weeks before, you know, you can have them doing things 2 weeks before the course starts. Do you want them to review your syllabus? Do you want them to be in your course? I would suggest that they're in your course and reviewing your syllabus a week before the course actually goes to students so they can get familiar with your content. You know, that's a process that can be worked out from an IT standpoint in terms of getting them in the course at that particular time. But this back page of this document, I think, really speaks to your question in terms of the levels of interaction that a coach can have in your course. We kind of created these based on our experience and based on Instructional Connections experience with coaches over the past several years. So, you know, level one is really that kind of communication. You know, you want your coaches to be monitoring your Q&A boards in different sections, answering student questions when they're able to, based on the information they know about the course, knowing when to escalate things to you as an instructor when those questions come up. And I can tell you that from the standpoint of the programs that I've worked with in the past, a lot of faculty start there because, you know, the class sizes tend to go up gradually over time. You talked about Shreveport, their numbers were not at 200 in a course, say 3 years ago. Their numbers went up gradually. So it gives you an opportunity to get comfortable with a coach in your course by just having them handle the communication aspects the first time around. Level two is they're more involved with grading. Say they're more involved with grading discussion boards or more involved with grading assignments. That's why rubrics are a very important part of these online courses, because it not only sets the standard for your students in terms of what they can be expected to be graded upon, but it also gives your coaches a guide in terms of grading work. It's also an opportunity for you to provide guidance and inter-rater reliability on a regular basis with what they grade. I recommend that you not only have a conference call with your coaches before the course begins, but to have a call with them each week if possible, or maybe every other week depending on the schedule. Gives you an opportunity to do some inter-rater reliability, share ideas, share feedback, and help make their ability to help you in your course much better. Dr. Gann.
Well, level one says escalate tech support issues, but does not solve them. So are they expected to help students like what we're going through just now, you know, with Zoom, like would they be expected to help them too? Because, you know, I think that would take away a lot of our burden and concern, you know, when it comes to technology. Are they expected to respond to students and help them? Because I
think they can help
mean.
as much as they can, and I think some of that information could be helpful or could be had from an IT standpoint here on campus. I don't think a faculty member in an online course should be expected to be technical support for a student. You know, I mean, if that's something, if you have a tip or a trick that's gonna help them, that's great, but I don't think you should be the 24/7 tech support person. That should be somebody on campus. That's where they should be directed. If there are, you know, simple problems that a coach can help, you know, like if they have the link for resetting the login for their account, you know, I think a coach could certainly be able to do that, but I would think that from their standpoint, it's always good to put the student in the hands of the IT person or the IT people on campus, because it's just gonna get the problem solved that much faster because they have that knowledge. So I think that would be something that we could kind of talk about from an overall standpoint of those simple things, or what we want that process to be for a coach when an IT problem comes their way. Do we want them to solve it, or do we want them to escalate it? Who should we escalate that to? And then we can pass that process on to the faculty, and that way, in your communication with coaches, you can say if you get an IT issue from a student, you should give them this information so it can be escalated to the proper person.
I have another question. What would be the most effective way to communicate to the coach? Is that email, telephone, or over the like WebEx and or Zoom? What's your experience and how often when you first started doing it?
Well, I think phone conferences and or web conferences are pretty key early on. because I think you wanna put a face to the name, and they wanna put a face to the name too, in terms of who you are as the instructor. And it kinda gives you a freer way to share ideas and talk about the course a little bit. As the course goes on, maybe email is more appropriate based on the relationship you've built with the coach. But I recommend, at the minimum, weekly communication with the coaches in your course, whether that be by phone, web, email. And those conversations may be no more than 15 or 20 minutes, depending upon what's going on in your course. It doesn't have to be a huge production from that standpoint. It can be a short conversation. Yes, and then
Yeah,
yes.
so on the assignment, I see where it says audio, video, feedback. I really like that idea. Is that in Canvas?
Yeah, so in the grade book, and we'll talk about that a little bit after
Okay.
lunch.
And then discussion board too?
There are video feedback in the discussion, and
Tip top.
there's audio, video feedback in the grade book when it comes to campus, yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, regarding again the efficient communication, so I think the coaches should be also in the courses at Canvas, right? Every time if we create a new course or new section, so the coach would be automatically included in the respective course
Yeah,
website. So then every time, let's say we make an announcement or we have a communication with the students, the coaches or a coach or coaches should be able to receive all this information simultaneously.
Yeah, absolutely. And by extension, you can tell your coach if they're communicating with a student, if you want to be copied on it, they can copy you on it. How you get them to communicate with students and with you in the course, that's an expectation for you as the instructor to set up from the very beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, what kind of access do we have to enrollment trends as our class is getting ready to open, so we can think about how many coaches we're likely to have and know that a bit in advance?
I can't speak to the process here at UNCP, and maybe Joy can, but I know that we have regular meetings with all the partners that I work with, and we talk about number of students that have been enrolled, number of students who are in that pending status and application that are being considered, and that sort of thing. It all depends on when your admissions calendar ends for a particular term, and then you can kind of extrapolate.
Right.
You have a pretty fair idea at that point, because once that admissions deadline ends with that particular term, you're really not going to accept very many students for that
How
particular
far in
term.
advance is that likely to be?
We had a meeting yesterday,
Yeah.
Nick,
I'm trying to remember now.
Roughly?
3 days
We
prior
have.
to, I believe, the start of class.
For
Dropping, I mean, for last ad of it.
the last ad of students,
Right.
yeah, I think it was.
So, but as far as
And-
like,
So nobody'd be adding, like, if you, on Friday, and
Right.
class starts on Monday, you would have that,
but you wouldn't know how many coaches you would have potentially.
It'd be pretty close to
You'd be
the-
estimating,
Yeah.
but you may not know for sure until,
I'm sure there's some
End of the week
system that
before.
you can be watching, along the way to kind of gauge.
yeah.
How many are?
Because I'd be
I mean,
curious to know if I'm gonna have 10 or 10,000. It
Right.
might be helpful
Yeah.
to know that
Of
as I'm
Of
going
course,
in.
no,
you know.
absolutely.
I would
Because
think,
the-
I would think we would know how many students have been admitted to the program by the admission deadline. and
Yeah, I
that
mean, you
would give
talked
us-
about-
That would give us the top
So
level of what.
the
you would
registration
need.
deadline is 3 business days before the start of the
3
class.
business days.
So
Okay,
it'll be
if it starts
building,
Monday,
but
it would
there
be
still could be
the Wednesday prior.
Yeah.
So maybe a couple of weeks before, I'd have a general idea of what the numbers are gonna be. Because you talked about
Yeah.
maybe having a couple extra coaches
Yeah,
ready to go. Well, that's assuming you know roughly how many you expect in the first place.
Yeah.
So if you're expecting 3, then you might have 1 or 2 extra.
yeah, you might keep a couple in your
Yeah.
back pocket just
I
in
mean,
case.
the deadline for actually admitting students into the program is only 5 days before the start of
Right.
class. So, there could be a lot of last minute.
We have a
But,
lot
but
of that.
from, it seems that trend analysis should tell us a little bit.
Yeah.
Based on experience with other schools and what's happening. So if we see where we are 2 weeks before, we should have a ballpark of where we're likely to be on day one.
Right.
So-
The other big wild card here is we think we're probably gonna migrate a bunch of our existing students, and we have like 111 online students today.
Right.
And many of them may migrate into this program. So, while right now it sounds like we may not have that many to begin with, it may ramp up gradually. we've got that 111 to deal with, so
Yeah,
you could wind up with quite a few in that first
you
class.
just don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are all good questions. It just in terms of the different mechanics that go into understanding what that class size is gonna be on the first day.
So essentially is, I guess, summary, design the course without any without any ties to enrollment. Just have it in such a way that you just simply roll with it regardless of whether you have 30 or 300, because you know, there are going to be some last minute kinds of changes.
You know, I said the first set, but actually that first October one, we wouldn't have any students rolling into that. The rolling would probably start in January.
Right, because it's midterm.
They're already registered for fall. most
Yeah,
of the
so that
students.
if they're gonna roll, they could roll in, but they'd have to roll it very early.
I think
right?
what we're gonna do is try to do a roll-in.
Because it's midterm, okay.
That gives us a whole term to work with them and explain the program, benefits and.
Right, okay.
Nick, even for the October intake, the first one, do we even have some estimate, like 30, 50? I know it's hard.
Matthew, what do you,
What's the
new program starting out,
Numbers,
our start date for AP to be recruiting students is July 4th.
Yeah.
So now with a start day of classes October 23rd, seems like sufficient recruiting time. I mean,
It's very hard to say because there are obviously a variety of factors that go
Yeah.
into that. You know, the market, the student, you know, what they're looking for. It's an October start. Generally, it's not as heavy as, say, a fall 1 start or a spring 1 start, because, you know, some students are gonna say, well, you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead and wait till January because I've got holidays coming up and Christmas and family stuff and everything. So I would say that,
We've seen that normally it's a steady incremental and so that would allow us several things to kind of manage the workload for us as faculty, you know, and then also to implement, as we see some courses are going to get more people naturally, either because they're foundational courses or because there are courses that many people, you know, so as we see that, we can build upon training mechanisms to prepare everybody for you know, incorporating the coaches into our courses, no?
yeah, but given where you guys are starting in October, 30 to 50 seems reasonable, but I can't really, I don't really feel like much higher than that. I don't, and a lot of it's gonna come down to the students that are recruited. Do they need leveling, like Caroline was saying? Are they gonna need leveling courses before they can go into the other courses that are in the core MBA? So, I don't see the numbers being unmanageable in October. But don't hold me to that. There's some things that, you know, what I've learned in 8 years, even though I'm not in the enrollment side, is every program grows organically in a certain way, and it's based on a variety of factors. I think there are a lot of things about your program that are very attractive from an admissions standpoint for students, especially in this area with the military base being so close. You guys do a very good job of serving them, and I can see the online program being very attractive for them from that standpoint. So, but I mean, generally, that's what I've seen, a steady growth with programs like this, but the numbers usually are fairly manageable to start with.
Will their numbers be, and this is an internal question, will their numbers be posted on the current website just as all other numbers are?
Well,
Or is that gonna be separate?
As far as I know, I mean, it should be,
Because you can check enrollment anytime.
exactly
Yeah.
like in
Fall.
Brady,
in
right?
Bravewell,
I mean, we have discussed this being kind of unique pages in BraveWeb for these students, but I'm not
Right.
sure,
Technologically,
I'm sure we can answer that question.
yeah.
But they should be somewhere.
There'll be some.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
We'll
yeah.
have 'em.
It'll be either that or something like
Okay.
what we
your
see
question's
today.
good, so we can make it available for
Right.
you, so you just click and you know. So we need to think about how we can do that. Yeah.
And, and actually, those, I mean, the way the sequence works today, we set up Blackboard, so now Canvas, early, and the students, once they're enrolled, appear in
You could see it.
Canvas, so at
Right.
least you'd have that to look at
And
too.
they would appear in Canvas about how far in advance, given this cycle.
I don't know,
You know what, I'm still learning the enrollment times, but I
Yeah.
think it's a couple weeks before the course start, I don't know for sure.
Okay, so essentially they would appear and then we'd have additional
then you'd
students
just see it building there.
that build
Yeah.
from there. Okay.
And that timeline's pretty appropriate to what I've seen
Yeah.
other partners
It's
do
going-
with
And
Canvas.
with what Matt just said there, the R formula calls for one coach at the, let's see, 31, once you get to 31 students. And then at 75 students, 2 coaches. So we're probably gonna be thinking about you'd have one coach for those first classes. Be unlikely, and maybe no coaches, you may be below that 31 level, and then there wouldn't be any coach.
And I think the gentleman here in the middle, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I have a question back to the role of the coach. So, you can let coach grade some discussion board or grade homework, right? In the Canvas, can we set the role like these assignments? The coach can grade and also put the grade in the grade book, and some other assignment like exam, they don't have this authorization. It can only be graded by the faculty. Can Canvas handle that or?
Let me take this one. Yes, you can, we can create a specific role. I didn't know we was going the coaches route, but we can customize the role where we can all be agreed and say, okay, what do you want these coaches to have access to within your shell? And you say, hey, you know what, I want them to touch this. I don't want them to make comments, posts, and all that fun stuff. So we can definitely customize permission role.
On a class-by-class basis, or is that have
In
to be
in
set?
one class.
We can make it overall.
Yeah.
We can make it overall, and you say, you know what, I want this coach to have, just create a global role for the coaches, and we can all get together and say, okay, what roles, what do you want these coaches to do?
But
What
if
you-
Charles wants one role and John wants a different role,
Yeah.
can we
Yeah,
accommodate
that's the
that?
problem. Why the faculty
I
can
would say-
control,
I would
Like a
can
recommend-
authorize.
Yeah.
I would recommend a common set of goals,
Right.
a
Because
common
you're gonna
program,
open a Pandora's
common
box.
program goals, meaning that everybody standardize what are the responsibilities of the coaches, because that makes it, that leads to a better implementation and less of this discretionality, and also that allows that if we are going to set up some sort of training for even the coaches or guidance to the coaches, we can set it pretty standard for everybody, no matter who it is. If a coach gets replaced in the middle of a term and you need to start with someone, they know exactly what is expected from them to do. I mean, not that that happens, but in case it would happen, that standardizes the implementation. Do you agree? Do you agree?
I would say so. I mean, it's different at every campus that I've worked with in terms of what they let coaches do. And I think there is a certain level of faculty choice that we have to take into account. I mean, you may reach a point with your coach where you're comfortable with them grading everything for you, or at least participating in grading with everything for you. And I think at that point, we'd have to have a discussion about, maybe there's a role for their only grading discussions, and maybe there's a role for their grading discussions and assignments. That does create a bit more work, I realize, for you, but as Caroline said, it's a discussion to have.
Right,
with
I
the
think
entire
this is a
group.
bigger discussion to have
Yeah.
as far as what we want the department, what we want the coaches to
But each faculty member is gonna have these meetings with the coaches, and they can establish for their coaches certain rules and things, and then it's up to you to manage
Make
those
sure.
coaches.
Yeah, that's how I see it.
And I think what we're saying is maybe the system will do some of it, and you'll have to do some of it.
Right.
But
Yourself.
my concern is that so if you don't have the correct authorization, the coach can mistakenly mess up your grading on final exam.
It could happen.
Yes, right. So that's the reason I say for IT points, you should first have a very clear authorization. Like Master has very good suggestion, like different levels of authorization, right? That's level all coach only can access to discussion board, right? That's level they can access to the assignments grading, and the highest level maybe all the assignments they can grade, they can modify, right? So that's something we should think about.
But Charles, we also have to take into account idiosyncrasies that come with different classes. Different classes would have.
I agree. So that's the reason I like Matthew's idea is that we set different authorization level. Well, some faculty say I don't want coach to touch any assignments.
Right.
Some faculty say okay, all the assignment you can. For example, quantitative class, I don't mind that coach grade that because
Right.
it's the standard answer, right? But I understand quantitative class, you don't want coach to touch like final essay or something like that.
Now, there is the option that you don't use coaches. In talking to LSU, they had one faculty that didn't use coaches. Now, they set everything up for automatic grading, and they didn't use coaches. That particular faculty member.
We have one partner in UTA where I have a faculty that have had already been working with the same coach for years. And they have such a trusting relationship and such a way that they can delegate. You know, this person is really an assistant to their teaching, empowered to really do, but without diminishing the role of the faculty there. So you have both. So you have a really amazing relationships and you build upon that. So it goes with training, it goes with you having time with them and setting up conversations where you agree what is okay, what do I do in terms of my relationship with the students, and what do I need your support with? Standardizing things like, for example, especially in math courses, accounting, statistics, students would push for, give me the answer, you're the coach, tell me how to do this. Because I remember at UT Health, I used to have that struggle. The TAs would come to me and tell me, Caroline, they want us to give us the responses. Well, you don't do that. And so I actually taught them how to be more Socratic and how to go and bounce back with more questions. So there is a relationship to build there to really be the person, this coach, that you need them to support your teaching. But there's many things. I have a university that uses the coaches only. It has two types of coaches. One that actually supports pedagogically, answering questions, but then they have a lower coach that they only make sure that everybody, so it's more of the engagement element. So if a student is not connecting, they check on them, and then so they do that. Besides the other work that we do in retention, this person is there in the course to make sure that people know where to click, remember this is due this week, and it's because they had a big procrastination issue, let's call it. So they decided to put this person in place to be reminding everybody to be on time and to do their work.
I think you had your hand raised.
Yeah. So if I'm comfortable, if I know somebody that I think can serve as a good coach,
Okay. Yeah.
other processes for recruitment,
Yes.
etc.
Absolutely. If you have somebody, if it's a former student or a colleague that you think would be interested in doing this, I can tell you a lot of the times in the education space, or their education programs, that it's usually current superintendents, retired superintendents who do this sort of thing just because they enjoy interacting with students. But if you have somebody you're comfortable with, you think would be good, there's a process to have them submit their name to Instructional Connections and get them through the process so they could be your coach. I have at least 2 faculty members that have their wives be their coaches. That's
Good idea.
that works for them. I don't know if that works for everybody. But she has the subject matter expertise that he needs for his course.
Good
So
dinner time conversation.
They have that.
And I'll fire him.
that works for them.
You're fired.
I don't know if that works for everybody.
On the recommendation
Not
of
as my
Attorney
wife,
General.
just as coach.
And a coach. I don't have that.
But yes, if you do have somebody you know that you think would be useful, absolutely, we can help you get them facilitated through that process.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Ran out, yeah.
I think we've discussed quite a bit of this already. The one thing I will say is after this course is over, obviously you're gonna get your student evaluations, here on campus, and, I don't know of a partner that, your coaches are not part of your instructor evaluation. Instructor evaluations are completely about how you teach in the course. Now, I believe Instructional Connections does survey the students in some of the courses randomly to find out how their coaches did in the course. And obviously, they're gonna want your feedback too as an instructor. So after the course is over, you'll get a survey from Instructional Connections asking you about your experience with that coach, you know, what they did well, what they could work on, if you would have that coach back again in your course or not. And you can also share that information with them. You know, a great opportunity for them and for you is to have a short call after the course is over and say, what worked well for you? What didn't work well for you? What can I do better as an instructor? How better can I support you in the course? And they can give you information too based on their interactions with students in terms of the things that the students liked, things they didn't like, things that might make the course more useful for the student, or might improve the student experience. So it's an opportunity for you to kind of get a jump start on the next time you teach the course, because that feedback could be potentially valuable to you from that standpoint.
Terry,
Yeah, have we discussed how we were going to handle course evaluations for this program? Because, graduate classes get the graduate course analysis each time they're taught. And
which I need to remind you is the course analysis, it's
Right.
not the instructor.
Right, the student evaluation of instruction.
It's not an evaluation of the instructor. We have not been doing those here in the School of Business.
The graduate course.
Because I think we were confused.
The graduate course analysis.
The course analysis has been done, but we haven't done any evaluation of the instructor.
Student evaluation of instruction. If it's online, we've been handling. We handle those in distance ed, but we just need to know because it's a tough process to get the data in the format it needs to be for each one of these. It's a little bit easier for the graduate course analysis because it's every time it's taught. But the student evaluation of instruction, it's based on last name and adjuncts and all those kind of things. We need to get that nailed down.
Terry, is that evaluation now specific to online courses? I know at one time it was not specific. This is a bigger problem.
yeah.
I mean, it's one outside of
Yeah.
the context of this. It's an institutional problem we've got to work with here, so. That's a really good point. We've got to, in order for us to improve, we've got to track feedback, so.
For distance ed's internal planning, we're gonna need to know, if we're gonna remain on this same trajectory for this program, and we need to know where we can plan accordingly.
Now, I guess I would open this question up to everybody. Is this an opportunity for us? Coaches are new, okay, it's a new concept. So is this an opportunity for us to take the lead and say, hey, here's our feedback, or here's our development of an evaluation?
For coach or for faculty?
For faculty.
I don't know, I'm just throwing the question out there. Definitely for coaches. But when you put an evaluation online that asks questions that aren't relative to online instruction, that are relative more to face-to-face instruction, is very hard.
I think AP must have some teaching evaluation templates.
And I don't want to take all their time, but I just want to throw that thought in your mind.
I think we can provide you with some
see there-
questions that could be helpful in terms of forming what that would be mostly from a coach standpoint. We have surveys we've done in the past that have evaluated coaches, and we could provide the template for that if that would be helpful.
I think we definitely need to consider it for coaches. But again, that's just food for thought.
And I would definitely, from that standpoint, keep those, whatever survey you do for instruction and the course, I would keep that separate from the survey you do for the coaches. So that data doesn't mingle, and so the student doesn't get confused that they're evaluating their coach when they really should be evaluating their instructor, and vice versa.
I have a question for Nick. Nick, could we not tie the evaluation to the online evaluation? So instead of evaluating the course, but, the instructor to say that.
Well, I think what we're
tied
saying
it
is
to
we
the
can
online.
design our own evaluation for this program, so it could be just.
We
like-
could do that too,
Yeah.
but then could we come up in time for the October, if not, then
I don't see why not. It's just gonna take, to me, if I were gonna design a process for doing that, I'd say we need a number of faculty members that wanna help design the evaluation form, and maybe some administrators and things too, but
You need
But
a
let me-
faculty
Maybe use the
council.
Let me,
template
let me
stuff.
clarify.
You need a faculty
Let-
council.
Let me clarify before this gets any larger. I wasn't saying that we need to do that. I was just suggesting the thought in people's mind. I didn't want, that's all I was doing, suggesting the thought, okay? I'm not saying,
well, I mean, I don't think what we have is appropriate today.
Stuart, you might have to,
So
I totally agree.
the idea of, since we're
I'm
doing
not
a
gonna
new
make that
program,
decision
why
or
not
suggest
have,
that
you
decision.
might have to make a
why not
motion.
address that issue?
Robert's and all that stuff before.
I think we're gonna have to take that outside of the
Okay.
Yeah.
academic partners. And I mean, it's something that needs to be addressed, but it's something we don't wanna take your time.
That's fine.
I have a question for Nick. Since you guys mentioned October several times, but for here it's beginning from August.
Well, what we said at the beginning, for those who were late, what we said at the beginning was disregard the August start date because that's been scrapped.
Okay. So we're begin the first module
So
on
you could just
October.
tag one more on the bottom end of that and you'd have 2 years. but-
And I would say from an evaluation standpoint, that's purely up to the university, especially when it comes to faculty evaluation. We're not asking for that kind of information. We can help you formulate questions if that would be helpful, but, you know, the instructor evaluation, that's purely up to the purview of the university.
I mean, in that route, we can send you others, you know, what other partners are doing in terms of faculty evaluation, but especially with that, the faculty evaluation is how they're using it to inform training, to inform, you know, or professional development, to inform, you know, reward mechanisms and so on, because the idea is that, and there's several levels of evaluation that you can do that can help you as an instructor to become a better instructor. So, you know, like a reflective practice tool.
I'm sure they're beneficial. That's more of a shared governance type of, you know, issue.
Exactly, absolutely.
The coaches, I think, are more of a department, or of a school type of decision. How do we want to evaluate those coaches?
Yes,
So I think
absolutely.
it's two different issues. really.
Absolutely.
But you're right, it's a lot of helpful information.
At UT Health, we would actually, people would take it, they were private, so you didn't have to share them, but you would take them there and I would help them analyze them from my position of instructional development. I would help them analyze and kind of see the areas where they have opportunities to improve. And then they have, so for example, professors that had brought up in a different school of thought where they were more distant in the online environment. Suddenly, the engagement part they were having difficulty with that. So I helped them with all that. How do you engage more in your course? So there are different things depending on where you are in the spectrum from experience to your philosophy of teaching, and these evaluations help spark a conversation to improve the way that you teach and the way that you portray yourself to your students. So,
Any other questions about coaching? So we've got about 20 minutes till lunch. Lunch is over at the
Chancellor's Dining Room.
Chancellor's Dining Room. So, one of the things that Nick, you and I had talked about in one of our previous calls was, you know, helping to keep costs down for students in terms of text, et cetera, that sort of thing. So I wanted to spend just a few minutes on open educational resources, just as we as we conclude our time here in the morning. Just how many of you are using text? How many of you are not using textbooks in your course right now? How many of you are not using a textbook at all in your course? Just out of curiosity. Is anybody using anything from an open educational resource standpoint in your course? As a supplement or anything like that?
Review them, but not use them.
Okay. Well, this presentation, real quick, is just going to walk you through some of the things that we've learned at AP, just in terms of OER, and just some ideas for you to think about in terms of as you transform these courses from where they are now into the 7-week format. There may be opportunities and there may be resources out there that might be helpful to you in lieu of text or in supplement to text. So what we've learned, based on research, is that it's about $1,250 per year for books and supplies for an undergraduate student. That's a pretty significant cost for them, and that's during the 2016-2017 school year. For non-traditional students in this survey in 2016, textbook is a key financial concern for them for more than half of them, about 57%. And this is part of the reason why. This was a survey that was done just in Florida about textbooks, course material survey, and you can see that in some very real ways that the textbook price actually drives some of their decisions. Nearly half of them in this survey said that because of textbook costs, they're actually taking fewer courses. Which if you're thinking about a student in an accelerated course, that obviously slows down their path to graduation. Sometimes they won't register for a specific course. What really caught my eye was this over here, the 66% of students who say that they won't purchase the required textbook based on the price. You know, maybe they might borrow it from a friend, maybe they might rent that textbook in some way, but the text cost is in some ways driving their decisions as to how many courses they're taking, what courses they're taking when, et cetera.
Man, is this grad students, undergrad,
I
both?
believe this is I believe this is undergrad.
Undergrad?
Yes, I believe this is undergrad. And then here's a breakdown by degree level. So the master's degree is the fourth one right here on the side. So you can see for these master's students, and there are MBA and non-MBA students in here, but more than 30% of the graduate students they surveyed said they would take fewer courses based upon the price of the textbook, and it's about the same percentage for not registering for a specific course. I was amazed that 20% of them said they would drop a course based in part on the price of a textbook, or withdraw from a course based on the price of the textbook. It's pretty. The numbers are pretty illuminating in terms of what's driving them, and 65% of the graduate students they surveyed in this survey, and again this is Florida only, said they might not necessarily purchase the required textbook based on the price. So you meet with textbook reps all the time, you hear from textbook reps all the time, and I think you see the same thing we see, that textbooks are getting updated more frequently, newer versions of textbooks are coming out more frequently, and they're doing that in part because students are looking for other avenues to purchase textbooks or to get that content. Yeah.
I have a question. So under don't purchase the required textbook, does that mean that they just didn't purchase any text at all, or they possibly rented the textbook?
It's possible that it's
They rented
possibly a mix of both.
Okay.
In that sense, they could have rented it, they could have shared that text with another
'Cause I know
student
that's
nearby.
a popular option
Yeah.
today, especially in the UNC system.
Yeah, and,
So, does that include ebooks or?
No.
yeah, doesn't. it's
Printed books,
Just
no.
printed text.
So that's another avenue that we actually advise people to try to find the ebook version.
So yeah, it doesn't include the ebook in that regard, but you can see, even if we're just talking about, the hardcover textbooks that they get, whether they're getting it on campus or they're getting it through Amazon or other means, the cost is driving their decision-making to a certain degree on what they do in their program and what they do in their courses. So, open educational resources are a way to help reduce the cost to the student based on the content that you might use in your course. Many of them are free, they're easy to find, you can reuse them, you can share them. Most of them have open licenses. We're going to talk a little bit about the things that you should watch for. But they can be anything from learning objects and audio to even entire course content or journal articles, or even textbooks that have, some folks are making textbooks now available as an open educational resource based on the subject matter and based on, the licensing. So there are some cases where you can actually find textbooks as OERs and provide those to students in that way. We have a colleague at our company who handles our education programs, and he teaches instructional technology at Rollins College online in Florida, And his textbook is an open educational resource textbook that was written by a friend of his who's an expert in the field. And that textbook gets the nice thing about it is it gets updated constantly. You don't have to wait on the next edition to get updates. I ran into another instructor who uses OERs entirely in her course. It's a public relations course. There's another course in an MBA program where I ran across an instructor who's also using OERs, but it's tied to a blog, so it constantly gets updated with new subject matter material every semester. So there are many ways outside of the text that you could potentially provide content to your students. And really, these are the 4 characteristics of different open educational resources. You can adapt them and improve them based on the licensing. You can sometimes it's as simple as just providing a citation at the end of the PowerPoint that you use, or the information that you use from that particular person. You can mash up materials based on the licensing. You can use the newer original version in many ways, and you can redistribute it as well. So there are obviously issues to consider when it comes to copyright. Some of these OERs can be used in different ways. So these are some of the different licenses that come with different OERs. And like for instance, CC BY is a Creative Commons attribution, and all they want in that particular situation is to simply provide credit to the original author. It's actually the most flexible type of OER out there. For instance, share alike on Creative Commons is you provide credit to the original author, and then any derivatives must be offered under the same license. So if you're looking at open educational resources, and we have some resources that we can go through here real quick, you're always going to want to be conscious of what the attribution license is for that OER. And these are just some of the benefits of using an OER. It obviously helps to lower the education cost. And the great thing about some of these, student buys a textbook, they might sell it back. In these cases, with the OERs, they actually have access to those even after they graduate.
If you look beyond the functional, obviously, convenience of having all these tools, is that if you create or if you use tools that have been created by others, especially in a business courses where you have, and I'm thinking from my perspective that I do in the international, it can be very interesting if you start creating things that are collaboration. We have these materials, and what is your perspective? And you engage in conversations with the same material, but seen from different perspectives. So you can have conversations and collaborations from using common materials in different contexts, in different countries, even in different languages. So the richness and the possibility that your course can become more global is also in your hands.
So these are just some of the websites out there that offer open educational resources, some of the ones we recommend. A lot of these are very easy to search, very easy to find, and most of them have already taken care of the issue of copyright and attribution for you. And we have a list that we can provide of everything that we'll talk about today from that standpoint. But Creative Commons is another great search tool to find OER educational resources out there. OER Commons. We have some examples of some business ones in here. So there's a directory of open access journals, the DOAJ. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but a lot of open educational journal articles can be found on this site in multiple disciplinary areas, including business. College open textbooks, if there are open educational resources from a text standpoint for the business field, you'll find them here. They've got multiple disciplines on this site. Khan Academy, it's mostly for math, but they've got some great stuff on there from business from the standpoint of quantitative, from the standpoint of math-based problems and scenarios and things like that. They've really kind of branched out from their original mission when they first started about a decade ago, and it's got a lot of great material, and most of the time you can simply just grab it and use it as long as you provide attribution. So for business, these are some samples of some OERs for business. The folks at Wisconsin Online have created an accounting cycle OER that can support some accounting curriculum. They've also created one for business records management and supply chain management. And the folks at Stanford have created some OERs related to entrepreneurship. So those are some sites that you can go to find additional materials related to that.
Some of these ones, the fun thing about this is that they're learning objects. So on learning objects is that you literally can do the exercise and it's self-assessed and the students can practice specific concepts. So and you get it and people get a response on their activity there is not graded. But those self-assessment activities that people click, they do the exercise, they answer the questions, they view the video, they do the activity and get a response, you got it right, you got it wrong. They're very good for what it's called in learning psychology, self-regulation. It allows people to say, uh-oh, I'm off track, I'm losing, there's something that I thought I understood and I don't. So it allows people that, and you can add with your instructions, depending on your score, please go back and review the lecture in case you need to strengthen or reinforce the learning. So these learning objects, that's the potential, and they're free and they're fun. They bring variety to your course too. For, thinking on, normally I have a presentation, a read, a discussion, an assignment. This adds the chocolate chip in that cookie.
Nice way of putting it. And they're great supplements. You may find something that really speaks to your course, and it might replace portions of your textbook. I'm certainly not advocating for you to dump your textbooks. Obviously, if you have a great text that helps you support your material and helps support your learning objectives and works well for your students, you should continue to use this. But these are some other options that you consider for supplemental materials, for things that might help you transform the content you have now into that online accelerated space. And we'll make all of these available via the Dropbox tomorrow as PDFs so that they can have access to it as well.
And often if we can put it like a pooled group for the business, college of business, or for the faculty, then they can look and see, maybe have a variety of materials in there, and maybe some common ones too that you might want to share, so you've got principles going throughout.
When we actually have
Okay.
a larger resource document than these are just several examples. We have a larger resource document of business-specific OERs for different disciplines that they could take a look at, and they could be useful as well. So, any questions about open educational resources? I know I kind of ran through that pretty quick, but I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to eat.
Has there any faculty who who have endorsed this academic fellowship that actually endorse this totally, entirely, and not use it as a supplement and have success?
I've had a few instructors who have used OERs entirely. Yeah, I mentioned the one that I had in my PR course that I helped her build. It's all journal articles, stuff you can find on the web, learning objects, videos from other sources, things like that. She did away with her textbook because she wanted to find things that were more recent and more work-based and things that were kind of going on out there right now, things that would update more frequently. So she kind of just did away with her textbook. There's the instructor that uses several blogs to actually address this content. I think it's I want to say it's a marketing course, as a matter of fact, where he just decided to use good blogs from people who are in the industry to help underscore his content in the course. I don't see too many people just doing away with the textbook completely, because there are obviously some advantages to having a text in terms of supplemental materials and things like that. But there are a few who have gone to the point where they've curated their own content, going through OERs and going through other sites and using that as their curriculum for the course.
Another one that I found that it was really nice, and I don't think that we added it there, but I found one that I thought was amazing, was that it was a bit of a simulation where you can actually put the investments and the project, and then it will tell you, it will test different things in terms of the viability of your business depending on what you added. So there were a couple of them that was interesting in the area of business, so we will facilitate that so you can explore them, in the terms of finance and other areas, economics, that you may want to explore it, because it allows the students to see the dimensions of what you do when you input something, what happens to other areas of the business or the market. And I thought without me being absolute, I'm acknowledging that I'm absolutely not knowledgeable on the topic, I thought that the potential of that kinds of simulations were fun for small businesses. I saw a couple. And
Nick, I don't know if there'd be any value in this, but Nick and I, last semester, worked closely with the dean and the director of the MBA at LSU Shreveport, one of your partners, and it would kind of be neat if we could arrange for the people who are teaching our courses here to maybe talk with their counterparts there, and where they could have a dialogue about which resources they're using, which work, which haven't. I think they might be open to that. Do you think, Nick?
I would think so.
I mean, it'd be kind of neat, like Cliff's teaching managerial econ or something like that, and you could strike up a relationship, because I know the president, the dean, I actually have to make a trip down there. Sometimes, it's be interesting to see what other people are doing.
Right.
You can always ignore it. I think they would enjoy hearing from us, but it could just be a back and forth email, like if you're teaching the information technology course or something like that.
I think we could certainly talk about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Dr. King?
I have a question about, I know a number of our faculty use my econs lab, my accounting lab, or my stat lab. Do you see a course like that just totally, like you use nothing but just my econs lab, or, all those third-party software that helps you to do grading, all that? Do you see any constraint when you, move over to this platform or this program that we keep using that? Would that be a constraint, or should we go beyond that and maybe supplement with something else? I know this is totally like the instructor's preference, but I wonder what you thought about that.
The best that I've seen that use like My Math Lab and those sorts of things, I find it best when an instructor finds a balance. For instance, I think a student finds a lot of dissonance when they're taking a marketing course and you've built everything in the LMS, and then they go to an accounting course and there's, it's really like 90% My Math Lab, and it's basically just a link to the course and they go out. It creates a lot of dissonance for them. So, my kind of rule of thumb in my head has always been, the courses impart, about your knowledge, your expertise, your experience in the field, and you want to be able to convey that to them in various numbers of ways, lectures, readings, that sort of thing. I find that My Math Lab and those other supplements work well for those progress monitor, small grading items, problem sets, that sort of thing. But I think that if you can find a balance between the two, I think that benefits the student the most, because there are some good things about My Math Lab and those other supplemental materials in terms of giving students the opportunity to practice repeatedly so they can, grasp those quantitative methods and those other math-based related things that they may find difficult to grasp. But I think finding that balance between the two is important. I would not advocate for simply just having everything in a publisher supplement like that in a course like this. But if you can find a good way to use those supplements, I think that's very useful to the students.
Thank you.
Lastly, if you're really wedded to your textbook or to your articles, and they're not always available, sometimes different libraries, we're gonna have to check here. If you have agreements that your students can access those articles through the library, but this plugin on paywall.org works for Firefox and Chrome, and you activate the plugin and you do a search, and if there's anywhere that this is available for free and without infringing copyrights, it will unlock and then you can access from that source, meaning some people do have access to disseminate specific chapters or articles, and they publish it online, but only them have. But you can go through their link and share what they are sharing, and that would be totally legal. You just have to acknowledge it. So that is a plugin that I use at times when I need to read something that is locked and I need to check it, and sometimes it works, not always works, but it's another way to find tools that are available in the web for you to use free.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up this portion of the session because I know we have lunch waiting for us. I'd like to be able to start the afternoon by 12:45, just because we have the light obviously out. We'll spend about an hour looking at the rendering for the shell, potentially getting some feedback, and then walking through Canvas a little bit to kind of give you a little orientation of what you'll see in Canvas when the instance is finally set up and you're starting to work on your course. So.
Is this room gonna be locked so we can leave stuff in here, or?
I guess that's good. You have-
Are we using this room for the session?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're till
Bye.
2.
Okay. Great.
If I can say, I want to thank Academic Partnerships for paying for this fabulous lunch.
Yes.
There's going to be a box lunch, and you just told me you're paying.
It's gonna be.
Received the reimbursement yet.
Well, let's wait until after lunch.
Oh, pizza business.
We're not